The moment awakening begins, it doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like something quietly clicks into place. The noise in your mind softens. Your reactions slow down, and suddenly life looks the same, but you don't. That's the confusing part. You're not broken, lost, or disconnected. You're becoming clear, and that clarity can feel unsettling before it feels powerful. If you've been feeling calmer yet more aware, less reactive yet more thoughtful, like you've stepped back and started watching your own life from a higher angle, this isn't random. By the end of this video, you'll understand why awakening feels like inner clarity, why this phase feels strange before it feels freeing, and what this clarity is quietly preparing you for next. But first, you need to understand what has already stopped running inside you, and why that changes everything. At first, awakening feels like distance. Not distance from people, but distance from the emotional chaos that once controlled you. Situations that used to pull you in no longer grip you the same way. Arguments feel predictable. Drama feels unnecessary. You notice thoughts instead of immediately believing them. Emotions still show up, but they don't hijack your actions. This can feel confusing because for most of your life, reacting felt like being alive. Now that automatic response system is slowing down, and you're left wondering who you are without it. But this distance isn't numbness. It's awareness creating space. And that space is where everything begins to shift, even if you don't see the full picture yet. As clarity deepens, mental noise begins to fade in ways you didn't expect. The constant inner commentary quiets. The rehearsed conversations disappear. The urge to constantly explain yourself weakens. At first this feels like relief, then it feels unfamiliar, then it feels slightly uncomfortable. You start noticing how much of your identity was built on constant thinking, worrying, and predicting. Without that noise, there's silence. And in that silence, questions arise. Questions you never had the mental space to ask before. This is where clarity stops feeling peaceful and starts feeling revealing. Because once the distractions fall away, there's nowhere left to hide. You begin seeing patterns clearly, calmly, without emotional charge. Patterns in relationships, patterns in your reactions, patterns in choices you kept repeating, even when they didn't serve you. And here's the part that catches people off guard. Clarity doesn't immediately tell you what to do. It shows you what is. You see the truth without emotional cushioning. You realize where you've been compromising, where you've been avoiding discomfort, where you've been calling survival normal. This awareness can feel heavy at first, because it removes excuses without offering instant solutions. But something important is happening beneath the surface, and it's only beginning to reveal itself. Around this stage, your tolerance for meaningless stimulation starts to drop. Things that once distracted you now feel empty. Endless scrolling feels draining. Loud opinions feel repetitive. Conversations that go nowhere feel exhausting. This isn't boredom, it's discernment forming. Your attention is becoming more valuable, and your mind is no longer willing to waste it. You don't need constant entertainment, because you're no longer running from silence. And when silence stops feeling threatening, you begin to notice something else rising underneath it. This is when awakening starts to feel lonely, not because you're isolated, but because fewer things emotionally hook you. You're still around people, still participating in life, but you're no longer emotionally entangled in everything. You observe more. You speak less. You choose carefully. And this creates an internal question that lingers quietly in the background. If you're not reacting, not chasing, not proving, then what's actually guiding you now? That question doesn't demand an answer immediately, but it starts shaping your awareness in subtle ways. As inner clarity sharpens, you begin recognizing the difference between urgency and alignment. Urgency feels loud, rushed, emotional. Alignment feels calm, steady, grounded. Before urgency controlled your decisions, now calm starts influencing them. You pause before responding. You reflect before committing. You sense when something is off without needing logical proof. This shift happens so quietly that many people miss it. But once it's there, your decision-making process is never the same again. You might even doubt yourself during this phase. You might think you're becoming passive or less driven. But what's actually happening is more precise. Your mind is no longer reacting faster than your awareness. You're not slower, you're deliberate. And that difference changes how everything unfolds. Choices feel cleaner. Regret decreases. Energy stops leaking into unnecessary battles. And just as this becomes noticeable, another internal shift begins taking shape. Your relationship with validation changes. Praise feels pleasant but no longer addictive. Criticism feels informative, but no longer crushing. You stop outsourcing your self-worth to reactions outside of you. Not because you don't care, but because your sense of self is stabilizing internally. You don't need constant reassurance anymore. You feel when something is right. And this internal certainty quietly removes the need to perform, impress, or over-explain. You begin setting boundaries without emotional speeches. You walk away without dramatic exits. You choose peace without guilt. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. And people notice. Some feel drawn to it. Others feel unsettled by it, not because you changed outwardly, but because your internal state shifted. You're no longer feeding chaos. You're no longer reacting on cue. And this creates a presence that speaks without words. Then life applies pressure, not to punish you, but to test your stability. Old habits resurface. Old distractions call for attention. Old fears try to reclaim authority. The difference now is subtle but powerful. You see the pull before you follow it. That pause, the space between impulse and action, changes everything. Because once you can pause, you can choose. And once you can choose, you're no longer living unconsciously. This is where clarity begins turning into strength. Your sense of time changes. You become more selective with your energy. You realize how expensive distraction truly is. You don't procrastinate the same way, not because you're forcing discipline, but because awareness makes delay uncomfortable. You see how indecision costs momentum, and clarity doesn't tolerate wasted potential for long. Your goals begin shifting quietly. You stop chasing what looks impressive and start prioritizing what feels aligned. You stop measuring progress by comparison and start measuring it by internal consistency. You ask better questions. Does this expand me? Does this drain me? Does this move me forward or just keep me busy? Those questions simplify your path without effort, and entire directions fall away naturally. Here's what most people don't expect. Clarity doesn't make life easy, it makes it honest. Challenges remain, pressure exists, but the internal resistance fades. You're no longer fighting yourself while facing obstacles. And that internal unity changes how you move through everything. Confidence emerges, not as loud certainty but as quiet trust. You don't rush outcomes. You don't need to dominate rooms. Your presence feels steady, and that steadiness speaks for itself. This is when awakening reveals its deeper purpose. Clarity was never the finish line. It was preparation. Preparation for intentional action. Preparation for aligned creation. Preparation for a life guided from within, rather than pulled from the outside. But none of that can happen without this phase first. And once you recognize that, everything you're experiencing starts making sense in a new way. Inner clarity isn't something you force, it's something you stop resisting. Once it arrives, it doesn't shout instructions or demand urgency. It waits for trust. The calm you're feeling isn't emptiness, it's space. The distance you notice isn't detachment, it's perspective. Your next step isn't to change everything overnight. It's to listen more closely to your energy, your choices, your reactions. Clarity grows through attention, not pressure, and the more you honor it, the clearer everything becomes. If this connected with you, thank you for watching until the end. Your awareness is already further along than you realize. Like the video, subscribe, and stay connected, because clarity doesn't fade when you notice it. It deepens,